Working for you. A weekly talk radio program which highlights developments of national interest and the activities of your St. Kitts Nevis government. Join host Lesroy Williams as he presents news, views, reports, and interviews about everything regarding the activities of the Team Unity government and the building of our communities and the development of St. Kitts Nevis. Tune in and call in to interact with your government and share your views regarding the upward forward development of your community and our beautiful Twin Island Federation. Working for You is weekly, every Wednesday live from 1:30 p.m. to 3 p.m. on ZIZ Radio, Win FM, and Sugar City FM with rebroadcast on participating stations. Working for You.
Good afternoon and welcome to Working for You. I am Lesroy Williams. Thank you very much for tuning in to today's program. Today our discussion will be, of course, on Carnival, and it's that time of the year when we start looking forward to that festive season which begins in November and ends in January. And I have no other than the chairman of the St. Kitts and Nevis National Carnival Committee, Mr. Noah Mills, to speak to us about all that there is to Carnival for Sugar Mass 47. Mr. Mills, welcome to this program.
Good afternoon, Mr. Williams, and I bring greeting not only from the Carnival Committee and the subcommittees, but if I may, the Department of Culture, the Ministry, and the Minister, the Honorable Sean K. Richards.
Mm-hmm. I understand that there is a packed calendar of activities for Sugar Mass 47, which runs, of course, from November 23rd to January 5th, 2019. But before we get into the calendar of activities, of course, you know, Carnival is an annual festival.
Yes, it is.
And probably we need to understand something of what Carnival actually is. Is it only the wind and grind? Is it only the music, the revelry, the costumes, and they're getting skimpier and skimpier as the years go by, feathers and rhinestones and so on? What really is Carnival? And what meaning does it really hold for our people?
Well, a few things. Carnival, I would say, is a salad bowl of activities, to be honest, and depending on who you ask, it will have different meanings. It is comprised of several activities, some that define or tend to keep alive and nurture our heritage, our culture. Others, as you mentioned, are linked heavily to entertainment, be it dancing, be it singing, performing, reveling on the streets or elsewhere. We have also seen over the past, I would say, 10 years or so, the introduction of a variety of fetes. We have wet fete, flat fete, powder fete, and several other fetes. And if you were to look on the calendar that we released on the weekend, and that calendar doesn't even have all of the fetes that I heard will be going on. It's also a chance for competition to showcase the skills, the competencies of a variety of our local artists. Not only soca, you have calypso, you also have pageantry at different levels, teenagers and adults. It's also an opportunity to showcase our creative talent as it relates to designs. You know, there'll be the Juve Parade, there'll be Grand Parade, there'll be the Junior Carnival Parade as well. So all of these things give our designers an opportunity to creatively tap into their potential, design costumes and bring them out on the street. It's a time for food. Carnival is about food as well. Food is an integral part of our culture. So you will find vendors coming out, and some of them giving us the traditional dishes, some of them preparing modern dishes for us, and not forgetting, of course, it's a time for drinking. Now we already advise that when you're drinking, you drink responsibly, you don't drink and drive, but I think it's safe for anyone to say, working with Carnival anywhere in the world, that drinking is a very important part of it.
Yeah, so it's a potpourri, if we want to say that,
Correct.
of a number of cultural events.
That is true. That is true.
The word fete. Let us look a little bit at the origins or the genesis of Carnival. Where did it all start? There are certain words that tell us something about Carnival. For example, J'ouvert. Fete is a French word,
Correct.
really meaning party. In Spanish, it would be fiesta.
Correct.
J'ouvert. What does the word J'ouvert mean?
Well,
Early morning or
Correct.
something like
Early
that?
morning, gathering, beat dancing, music in an open environment. Hence the streets, J'ouvert on the streets of Bastille. And it's not only do you see J'ouvert for Carnival time, but even the community festivals around St. Kitts and Nevis, they have J'ouvert as well. But Carnival has a lot to do with the freedom that was achieved over the years. If you were to look at it over the course of 365 days, some persons would tell you that they've worked hard all year.
Yes.
So at year end, it's time for them to relax and drink and have fun. But if you dig a little bit deeper, you'll find many of the components of Carnival date right back to slavery. For example, if I were to dissect and pull out just Calypso, you know, Calypso was born out of the bowels of the slaves, doing songs and communicating or ridiculing their masters, which then led into what is called a griot.
Yes.
A griot was the singer, the Calypsonian, who would travel from village to village. They would be in no big time radios and newspapers and things of that nature. So the Calypsonian was called the local newspaper for the poor. And all of that, as we continue, and not only evolve, but it continues to evolve today. Like you said, whereas maybe 20-25 years ago you would have found costumes which hardly reveal the face of a female. These days you're seeing several other parts of the body.
Yes.
Especially if you go to countries like, let's say, Brazil or Trinidad, where I don't even know I'm supposed to say, I regret to announce that I have seen just body paintings,
Yes.
females on the street, and I'm certain you've seen that sort of thing.
I
be it
have.
live
I lived in
or-
Trinidad.
There you go. There you go. Some persons have actually asked me, when do I estimate that sort of costume, if I may label it as a costume, because when you have just body painting and perhaps two rhinestones and two specific parts of the upper body, is that a costume?
Well, I think it is.
Okay.
But the whole thing is, Carnival is a kaleidoscope of color. It is a festival, popular culture, that brings all kinds of people together.
Correct. It brings, for example, this year we've had conversations with a potential troupe based on persons living here, nationals of Grenada. They are attempting to bring a J'ouvert troupe where you will see the Jab Jab, a part of Jamaicans are putting something together as well. So like you said, it's a kaleidoscopic array of cultures, and culture defined as music, dance, food, costumes, liming. You know, we lime in different ways depending on which country you're from, and the kitchen tend to go out a little bit later. In Trinidad, for example, if the party is going to start 1 o'clock, India is going to be packed by 1 o'clock, because they know they want to get, quote unquote, according to, who was it, Grandmasters, the full
Yes.
money what?
And it is something that in the Caribbean that people can identify with.
That
Even
is
the
true.
people from the Dominican Republic.
That is true. And this year I was in New York for Labor Day, and it was a beautiful experience to see the Eastern Parkway line, and hopefully, you know, you're going to be up there with us next year. We are planning something like that.
Okay.
I have already pitched to the Honorable Eric Evelyn from Nevis. I have spoken to the Honorable Sean Richards. I have spoken to a representative of CPL/Patriots, Mr. Val Henry, and I will be speaking to the music festival for us as a team to collaborate and have a carnival presence in New York next year
Yes.
for Labor Day.
Right. So, Carnival does much more good to our society.
Well, I don't know if it does any bad in you saying much.
We look at the goods.
I think
But-
that the police and the army and the other security forces have done a tremendous job over, especially the last 3 years where we've been there, in controlling some of the bad, so to speak, as it relates to accidents, as it relates to crime and violence, as it relates to personal attacks during the various events on the street or in the neighborhoods. And I commend them using this medium and all of the media platforms carrying this. I think more and more the stakeholders are beginning to understand that Carnival is about togetherness. And it involves politics. And when I say politics, I'm not necessarily referring to Labour and Unity and CCM. I'm talking about the politics of competition. I'm talking about the politics of Calypso. You know,
But it also involves mockery of authorities.
of course. And that is in the DNA, it's in the bowels of Carnival. Because as I told somebody the other day, irrespective of which government is in power, you will have Calypsonians singing for and singing against.
The Calypso is a social commentary.
Many types. There's wit and there's political commentary and everything else. But I can't ever recall, and you can support me here, of a single year where there wasn't a Calypsonian singing for the government in power at the time, and likewise a Calypsonian or more singing against. That's just the nature of Calypso.
And then sometimes it's the only way that the layman on the street gets a chance to really express what he wants to express.
Yes, you're very correct. And not only what he wishes to express, but perhaps what others would like to
And what
express.
others would like. And,
And they do
and
not
it's
get-
poetic license.
Yes. One would hope, of course, that each and every time they are professional about it and respectful, because, you know, once Calypsonians start crossing certain legal bounds, defamation of character, and libel and scandal
Sure.
and everything else, then the legal aspect of it steps into play. And we don't wish for that. We wish for it to be in a very fun atmosphere.
And Caribbean people are very good at this. They don't have to call any name. They can be very witty and very cutting, very sarcastic, and so on. They don't have to call any name.
That is true.
If you want to take it, you take it.
That
As you
is
say,
true.
I throw me corn, I didn't call any foul.
That is true.
Right? And at the very same time, we are very good at the double entendre.
Which is a part of Calypso, a very important part.
Using
No.
language in such a crafty way that gives double meaning.
And actually, when you're talking about double meaning, it must be balanced because I have some colleagues in Barbados from the National Cultural Foundation that manages Carnival Day, and hopefully a little bit later in this session we'll be able to talk about them. But they would have regaled me with the story where one Calypsonian actually went too far. There was a business entrepreneur who would have had a poultry farm, and it was explained that for good or for bad, let's say 5,000 birds died, and this Calypsonian created a song calling Lester Williams, he is the owner, and instead of burning the 5,000 birds, they were plucked and put into the supermarkets immediately. And the owner of the farm actually sued, and up to this day the Calypsonian, the Carnival Committee and the government, they were found liable and are paying back in different forms.
Right. I remember when I was in studying and living in Trinidad, there was a calypso that was actually banned. Paul, your mother come. Your mother come from America. And it was banned because, one, the school children had it in all kind of form and fashion. Paul, your mother come. And they put it and all kind of interpretations
Correct.
to that song.
If we could have a call in where a caller can tell us some of the songs that were actually banned here in St. Kitts, because none comes to the fore at the moment, but I do recall there being times when songs were banned, and not necessarily because of interpretation, but there were times when the governments or ministers felt that they were individually being targeted, and having the song played would have done more harm, so to speak, than good in the eyes
But is
of the
that
authorities.
enough to ban a song because you think that you're being individually targeted? People are targeted all the time, politicians no less. So is it enough, a criterion, to say because somebody is individually targeted? What do you mean by targeted? Criticize?
No, I don't mean criticize, because especially when you put up yourself as a public figure, you should expect to be criticized, and more it appears as if that is the leading ingredient in our culture. Some persons do not necessarily have the expertise, the experience in an area, but they have an opinion, hence they criticize. I think if there is evidence to suggest that there is a legal breach, then the Carnival Committee, the government, might actually put a ban on that song to prevent it from becoming liable.
Yes.
Outside of that, I think once it is done in a crafty manner, and once they exercise their poetic license to present information packaged in a very nice way, if they are speaking fact, they should be certain to have the evidence right there in their pocket to support
Yes,
it.
yes.
If not, like you said, they should not mention names. They should not speak of specific institutions. For example, you can't say the director of SKNIS did this, because there's only one director. So you're crossing the threshold
Are you sure?
right there. Well, I'm not sure. I am going according to the organizational structure that I reviewed some
is
time
only
ago.
one.
There is only one. So Calypso is a very exciting focal point of Carnival, and last year and this year we already opened up registration. You know, we like to move early, so there are quite a few Calypsonians who've already registered, both from St. Kitts and Nevis. In about a week and a half, October 27th, we're actually having our first judges seminar in the morning of that Saturday, and the judges will again come to the session in the afternoon with Gabby, mighty Gabby out of Barbados, and then the Calypsonians will have a chance. And you know, it's interesting because too often I tell people it's not necessarily who is hosting the session. Too often we are caught up on who is the facilitator instead of
Yes.
what we can learn from the forum. It doesn't have to be a PhD. It doesn't have to be someone with a master's degree.
Right.
It could be an individual just leaving CFB. Because learning and knowledge, in my opinion, is not to prove wrong or right. It's to decrease the variance in our interpretation.
True.
And what I mean by that, if you see a calypso as being a good calypso, and I disagree with you, we should be professional enough to dialogue, to discourse.
Yes.
I present my points, you present yours, and at the end of it, we should have decreased significantly the distance between your opinion and my opinion. We may never agree totally, but once at the end we can shake hands and say, yes, I can see your point, you can see mine, I think we're going along the correct path.
Right. Now, the calendar of activities for Carnival was launched. Could you highlight some of the activities on the calendar, and are there any new activities?
Yes, the new activities, both from the fringe activity perspective, we are talking about privately produced, owned and marketed events, and there are some new activities from the Carnival standpoint as well. Now, when we say fringe activities, they make up a very, very important part of Carnival.
Yes.
Because there are different demographics, there are different psychographics, there are different behavioral attributes that will define a population. And what I mean by that, you'll have a certain age range who would always go to Calypso.
Yes.
But then again, you would have a certain age range who would not. So Carnival has to be a balance of all of these activities, where the, if I may label it, the younger generation, the majority of the younger generation, who would want to go to the wet fete and who would want to go to the powder fete and the flat fete and all of the other fetes, the cooler fete and Inception. So those are growing and we welcome them. Of course, they're the mainstays. You would have had Inception last year. You would have had Cooler Fete, and they've been around for a little while. You introduced last year. You would have had the Glow Parade. You would have had Jewade. You would have also had the Flag and the Wet Fete, and they're coming back this year, and they have some big time surprises, and you have some new events on the calendar as well.
Yes.
For example, I heard that there's one being called these days a silent fete, and when I saw that first, I wondered what in the world could be a silent fete. And apparently it's a company, a concept where, let's say, 1,000 headphones will be provided to the party goers, and you wear the headphones and you listen to the DJs and you dance and everything else. I'm not certain if there could be 3 DJs, so I am listening to country and western and you're listening to gospel in the same fete. But we are dancing, we're doing all sorts of things, and when we feel like talking, we take off the headphones and we discuss.
Right.
So I heard it's a hit in Antigua and other parts of the Caribbean, and it's going to be introduced here. So I actually welcome that.
Okay.
Welcome that.
Okay.
We also have Haynes Smith coming back with the Caribbean Talented Team, which has been a mainstay for many years. So that gives you an idea of some of the new fringe activities that will be there.
Okay.
There was a hiatus last year from Party Central
Yes.
on Bank Street. There's a new entity taking over that line of entertainment, which would run for about 3 weeks as well. Because after the shows, persons would like to go somewhere to hang out.
Mm-hmm.
So that is scheduled to go on Bank Street.
Right. Now, there are some other things like, for example, a museum, maybe?
Yes, and persons have been asking me about that. The museum concept is, well, first and foremost, I believe that as a people we should preserve the fabric of our society. And for us to do that, we have to do several things. We have to collect artifacts and keep them in a certain place. We have to do research and make sure it's accurate. And if we don't get a chance to digitalize all of this, we create a physical space called a museum. And that is what the Carnival Committee will be doing this year.
Yes.
We have 2 options playing with, and one option is a building owned by the government on Bank Street as the location for the museum. And it will open with the formalities, of course, and then we have a play. Tatum, I would have given him information, and we would have sat down with his team and we would have crafted a little play. So you'll have that play talking about Carnival from 1957. And when I say Carnival, I say 57 because Carnival itself started in 1957, but National Carnival started in 71.
Yes.
If you do the research, you would realize at one point there were 2 carnivals. So effectively, I heard there was a carnival on Keon Street and there was a carnival on the Bay Road, and it had political implications. The Honorable Southwell at the time in 71 decided that it should be nationalized and it should be managed by the Carnival Committee as an extension of the government, and that happened in 1971. Now you walk into the museum after, and you're going to find, for example, instruments that create the Calypso band as we know it today, as opposed to instruments that used to exist a long time ago. You will also have a steel pan ensemble, so you get a chance to see what makes up, and you'll read a little history. You get a chance to find the string band in another little corner. You'll also find costumes on display for all of our 6 existing folklore troops. And I say existing because
I'm happy that you mentioned that, the folklore, because Carnival, we see quite a bit of African retention
yes,
in Carnival, and of course, fused with Catholicism, because it was introduced
and some
by
Indian.
some Indian. They were introduced by the French, and that is why in those very Catholic countries, Carnival Monday and Tuesday, those 2 days, just before the beginning of Ash Wednesday.
Correct.
And the word itself, carne valle,
Yes.
means goodbye to the flesh.
From a religious standpoint.
From a religious
Yes,
standpoint,
yes,
goodbye
correct.
to the flesh. And so therefore Lent is a time where you fast and you pray and all of that sort of a thing, and all the sort of a worldly and carnal stuff that Carnival speaks
Are put to rest.
are put to rest
For a certain time.
for a certain time.
Yes.
Now, the folklore, the African retention, what is really being done to preserve our folklore in Carnival?
Well, I mentioned the 6 existing because there were several others. Just yesterday, I was looking at some photos of the Indians. They had cowboys and Indians, and they had David and Goliath, and they had Giant and the Spear. All of those things are non-existent today. And now, it would have been nice if over the years a museum would have been developed 10, 20 years ago with pictures and costumes and everything else. So we now have 6 that are active in the likes of the Bull,
Yes.
Masquerade, Mummies, Actors, Macadrumbies, and the last one is Clowns.
The clown.
Yes. So you go into the museum and you will have mannequins with the costumes, and you would have a little write-up talking about it. Now we should also have some books on display there that talk about Carnival, some plays, some talking about, I have a little piece that I'm going to expose there about the masquerades. We're going to try to get a piece from Pension who spoke about the bull.
Yes.
We're going to also, you're going to be able to walk in and also hear the music. You'll be able to put on headphones so you can see the Calypsonians from the 1980s performing, hear their songs. Put on another headphone, you can hear string band. Put on another headphone, you can hear steel band. Put on another headphone, you can hear past queens giving their performances and everything else. You're going to have other interviews as well. For example, we are trying to create a listing of persons who would have contributed significantly to Carnival over the many years, or who would have experienced it. So before these persons pass on, we have a chance to interview them, let them give the information, their opinions, and of course create footage for posterity. You ask how we are preserving it. I know the Department of Culture has held and continues to hold several different seminars. For example, Zach Nisbet, he was engaged by the Department of Culture last year and the year before, and they would have had training sessions in schools. So last year for Carnival, you would have seen Mummies, for example, and the kids were about, I would say, 11 years of age. You would have also seen Masquerades, the different troops of that. So that is a holistic approach of introducing the youth, because of course they have a tendency most times that when they hear the Small Axe or the Grandmasters or the New Vibes or Collision,
Yes.
they tend to slide in that direction more so than picking up the kettle drum.
And what Zach is doing is such an important part of the reproduction of culture.
Yes,
Yes.
an instrumental role.
The younger generation.
Correct.
And that is so important because at the end of the day, they are the ones to carry on the culture.
Correct. When we are gone, of course. Now, the steel pan, it has been a part of our culture. We know history tells us that it was created in Trinidad. It's the national instrument for Trinidad. We would have operated or adopted it in the very early 1900s in our parts of our carnival and everything else. And just over the summer, they had an extensive camp teaching young and old to play the steel pan. Then they would have had them perform even at CPL. You would have had them welcoming or being inside performing. So these are all efforts and programs by the department, the ministry, and Carnival as a triad, so to speak, coming together to ensure that the cultural aspect, the heritage aspect of Carnival
Is
it's not
preserved.
lost.
Now, every year, there's always controversy. Of course, you can't please everybody. And sometimes you are mired in it. But you always hear, oh, they cheat. It doesn't matter who wins or who loses. There is always public opinion that, look, this person did not deserve to win. This is the person who should have won. And so and so. What do you have to say in terms of the qualification, certification of judges, the standardization of criteria, the workshops for judges, and all of that sort of a thing, because there will always be public opinion. But at the very same time, you have to ensure that you have the highest standard, certification, qualification in terms of those whom you select on your panel of judges.
You know, it's interesting. I agree with you. And it's not only the public, as in the audience members, who said that, but even, for example, the Calypsonians. And I'll go a step further. We have several chats with what will amount to be maybe 100 individuals, Calypsonians, male, females, parents of junior Calypsonians. And I'll give you a perfect example. For the last 2 weeks, we've been pushing out. We remember I mentioned earlier that we have a workshop, the first workshop for judges for
Yes.
Calypso, coming up next week. We've been pushing out a request for the Calypsonians to give us suggestions. Who would you like to be a part of the judging pool this year?
Yes.
Give us your suggestions. Because every year there is criticism as to the judging pool and who's finally selected. I can tell you this much. Thus far, one Calypsonian has given us one suggestion. So that tells you sometimes that it's a part of our culture to say they cheat. Now, to address that, not only are we having numerous judging seminars, not only are we having regional and local facilitators coming here,
Yes.
but in December we are putting together what we're calling the 4 Cs.
Yes.
And the 4 Cs is the Caribbean Carnival Chairperson Convention. And it's the first time we're hosting that. And it's going to be here in St. Kitts. We have invited the directors, the chairpersons, be it the carnival chairman or chairwoman, as the case might be, from the various countries. And they'll be descending upon St. Kitts during carnival time to
Yes.
have discussions along those veins. And what I mean by that, how do we standardize criteria? Not only numerically and in terms of sub-dimensions, but the interpretation. For example, there are cultural nuances where in Dominica, they might say that lady has good poise or good courage. Let that lady come to St. Kitts and we Kittitians may have a different opinion. It doesn't make it right or wrong. But if we don't have an exercise where we attempt to standardize the interpretation of the criteria, then there's always going to be that gap. Another thing is, you spoke about the judges being certified. If we can get together as a Caribbean, as a set of countries, to develop a program where, for example, you yourself, you've judged Calypso and you
Yes.
attend all of the training sessions,
Right.
it doesn't mean that Antiguans would see you as a professional judge, so to speak, who they can invite you and we can invite someone from there. Now, there is always this big country syndrome. So we find it very, very easy to say, well, we can invite somebody from Trinidad to let
Yes.
them be a judge. I can almost guarantee you Trinidad may not consider someone from Nevis to go up there to be a judge. So how can we address that? Where a judge from any country would be qualified, certified, so to speak, to be able to travel. Another thing that the 4 Cs will address is marketing the Caribbean as a carnival junkie, for lack of a better term,
Yes.
destination. Mount Strat, St. Kitts, St. Croix, they have carnival around the same time. So can we go to the airlines, to the travel agencies and say Canadians and Europeans and Americans or persons from other parts of the world, when you come to the Caribbean, look at this carnival package where you can hit 3 countries in 3 weeks. So when we sit down at that convention, that's another topic we'll discuss.
Okay.
Yet the last topic, well, we have others, but the last one I'll speak of is a circuit for our winners, where I would know after this year's soca event, this year's Calypso event, the kings and queens know that they have gigs in St. Martin, in Anguilla, in Mount Strat, already confirmed. Now, I've already started the ball rolling on that concept, where the minister and I have counterparts in Barbados. Over the summer, I took up King Suki from Nevis to perform in Barbados at their carnival. This year, we're going to have their Junior Calypso King. Additionally, their leading Calypso Queen, who would be equivalent, let's say, to singing Jackie or Diva, Anastasia here, or Kibi, she's coming down for the opening of our carnival. On that same night, when we crown our female, she has an automatic invitation to go to Crop Over next year. So it's a sort of cultural exchange while simultaneously improving the efficiency and reducing, when people say, the number of times you'll hear the cheat.
I raised that question not because I think that people will stop saying it, because that will be forever said. There will somebody who will always feel that this person should have won.
Yeah, and now that you're saying that, what comes to mind is perhaps we can develop an app and let audience members, well, not do the judging for the show, but do judging themselves. So they can download the app. There would be a little module where the criteria, the definitions, and they can do their own judging and publicize it.
Right.
And we'll see how their score sheets match up to the professional judges.
Good. Now, has there ever been done an impact assessment of Carnival in terms of its economic, its cultural, its social impact? Has there ever been done an economic impact assessment? Of course, we are hosting Carnival every year. It's a big thing on the calendar. We have people coming home for it. Nationals return. You have tourists. You have a lot of people setting up their barbecue stalls, and it's an opportunity for business around that time. The hotels and so on, the restaurants, you know, all of that. And at the very same time, it's bringing people together. The culture is being displayed and all of that. What impact has it had? Has there ever been a study?
Well, to have a study, the short answer is no. And I'll explain where we are going with that, because we see the significance of it, and one is scheduled to be done this year. However, to take you down a journey from 2015, we inherited a carnival model, and sometimes I replace the word model with creature, where when we asked for financial statements, there were none available to provide to us. And that, to me, forms one of the pillars of any economic impact, because we would need to see first and foremost, for example, how much are vendors paying, how many vendors, what is it the government is giving, how much is the corporate world giving back in terms of corporate social responsibility. So we would have turned in the first budget according to our knowledge. We've done so 3 years. We're getting ready to send in the fourth. We would have turned in financial statements at the end of each of the 3 years. And I'm very proud to say that the minister, we would have had an independent company prepare financial statements for the first year, and the minister has them in his possession, and they would be going through cabinet and the House of Assembly, and I think the records would show that that is the first time that has happened. If there's anyone who can say that has happened before, we stand to be corrected. Kindly give us that information. Now, once we have all of that, because if you bring in any entity to conduct an impact study, they first need to know how much is being spent at minimum from the government standpoint, for the government to be able to calculate a return on its investment. Because the subsidy that they give every single year is indeed an investment in the country, in our people, in our art forms and everything else. Now, last year, the ministry would have contacted the University of the West Indies, and it was unfortunately a little bit too late for them to plan such an activity. I have been advised through the Permanent Secretary's office that it will be done this year. So one can expect them to come and have interviews, for example, with the media houses. The media houses would give you a perfect record to say, well, is advertising increasing around carnival time? They can interview the operators of stores. Do your sales go up in terms of new clothing and new shoes and jewelry and everything else?
The hotels.
The hotels they can look at. They can look at airline tickets. Even the cruise is carnival. For example, in Trinidad, we know that it is seen as a tourism product. So cruise lines and airlines go there specifically for carnival. They can talk about taxis, they can talk about the bus drivers. So there are several subject pools that they can interview or survey, pass out electronic or paper surveys
yes.
to get an idea as to even households. For example, some persons take loans just for carnival.
Yeah, but the survey, of course, you're speaking about the economic, but I also spoke about the social assessment. The survey can include that as well. I mean, how well does carnival bring people together? How do people feel in terms of an affinity, in terms of the culture? That is very important as well. Participation in the culture.
One would expect that parts of the questionnaire would tap into the cultural and the social and the economic. Okay, and no doubt perhaps the educational part of it, because carnival in and of itself, as we said earlier, is also educational. We can look at the number of persons participating in troops,
yes,
be it folklore or the entertainment-based troops, the number of musicians turning out to play in the steel pan, or turning out to play the string pan, or turning out to be a musician for calypso. So there are several questions, observations and interviews which, when put together, can give us a very, very accurate snapshot as to
because how people participate in their culture, what is their culture, which is their way of life, gives some idea in terms of their love of country and their patriotism.
I agree. They can do content analysis as well. They can, and I say all of these things because I do research as part of my consultancy. So they can search the newspapers, they can search the online media platforms to see what sort of ads, what sort of public service announcements, what sort of press releases, and the content, the verbiage that was used to analyze, hey, what were people saying? Did they enjoy? Did they spend? Did they promote? Did they attend? How was it? Was it successful? It has to be a holistic analysis for us to be able to say yes. Well, I think anyone would say the answer is yes. But I'm an empiricist, so I need the data.
Want data.
Yes. But I think anyone could safely say that carnival does indeed contribute significantly to the cultural, to the social, to the economic, to the educational fragments or fractions of society.
Right. Okay, you spoke about promotion and marketing of carnival. How is that done?
We use all platforms, all avenues. For example, television, radio, social media, which include the Twitter, from Twitter to all of the Snapchat to Facebook to WhatsApp to anything you can think of. Billboards, flyers, posters, all of the avenues available. We also manipulate several executional styles while developing the message. And we have persons who engage, we have companies who engage, be it something as simple as, and let me give him a plug here, as simple as Bucky Got It.
It is part of it done through the Ministry of Tourism and Culture.
Yes. The Ministry of Culture, the Department of Culture, for example, they have their programs and they would incorporate the carnival message. If they have their Facebook as well as their website, they would do that too. The Ministry of Tourism, they sometimes, most times, come on board, for example, in the terms of buying tickets, in terms of sponsoring some of the girls for the pageants, in terms of buying boxes, in terms of advertising from their end. For example, we open Carnival on the 23rd. And just to show you the sort of relationship we have, the back wall around St. Kitts is on the 24th. Last year, the Ministry of Tourism had a truck.
Yes.
with entertainment, stopped at every single stop with us and interacted with the people. And they've already confirmed that this year they will be doing the same thing. When they had their music festival, we also went along. So that gives us, and it gave them, and will give them again, an opportunity to now market on the ground, not only in St. Kitts, but also in Nevis. To everyone coming out in the street, we have Calypsonians, we have soca artists, we have DJs, and all of them are helping to send out that message.
I'll take this call. It's not time for, but someone is calling and I'll take it.
Certainly,
You can,
certainly.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Working for you.
Earlier I thought I heard a comment in reference to the content, the lyric content of calypsos, and did Mr. your guest there say that the concern about offending persons was a consideration with regards to, and these are my words, banning a calypso? Could you tell me or clarify for me what you said?
No, actually that was not said. The words banning and content, we were talking about songs that were banned, and the moderator here would have mentioned a case in Trinidad and specified a certain song. What was it again?
Paul, Your Mother
Come. And then I said I would have recalled, and I couldn't specifically name the songs, that some evening St. Kitts and Nevis, they were banned as well. And I offered an explanation sometimes as to why governments may consider banning a song. If the content is offensive, if the content will create a legal battle or challenge for the government, for the carnival committee, for the organizing committee, those would be premises for banning a song, in my humble estimation.
But how would you ban the song? Is this after the person has already sung it on stage? You will not allow it to be played on the radio? Is that what you're saying?
Well, one way in doing it for certain, if for argument's sake, there is a Calypsonian who has a very disparaging, degrading, demeaning or discrediting song or lyrics in the song, and he's specifying the name of the individual. One way is to immediately write to the bands who are supporting that Calypsonian and saying flatly, well, you know, he's not going to be able to participate in this competition because of the type of content. Hence, we're asking that you do not play that song. The government also has access to, for example, the national radio station, that a policy can be put in place that song, which would create legal ramifications for them, is not to be played. The government could also write to private radio stations requesting same, informing them from a legal standpoint that if that specific radio station is or continues to play that song, it then becomes liable.
Okay, I understand that. But at the time of the rendition of the song on stage in a live performance, how would one know ahead of time, since one isn't singing to a scripted thing in front of them, how would one know what words someone's likely to utter at 18 minutes past 8 o'clock on a Friday evening?
I have no idea. And if you're asking the question, perhaps you would have thought of it and you can provide an answer.
So that is why I find the notion of banning, having been rendered, having been said out loud, is one thing about broadcasting. Repeating, I could understand, but having uttered the words that may be potentially libelous, I'm concerned about that, because I'm concerned about what I would call preventive measures, in that saying, I know what this person is going to say, so I won't give them a chance to say it.
So,
because that's what we say. We think that we know what's in the person's head.
who is saying that? You are? If you're saying
No.
that, I
I'm
would
saying
consider
the
it ludicrous.
notion of banning the broadest sense of the word. I could understand not having something broadcast because of potential libelous.
Okay, maybe I should ask this question. So how you define it, ban? Because the way we defined it here is having heard the song and having verified that the content could lead to litigation, then the action, the sort of reactive action is taken. I don't know if you're
I have no
suggesting.
problem with reactive.
Okay, so
I have no problem with after the event saying, okay, having heard that,
well, we agree
we
with
shall
you,
not
sir.
broadcast that, we shall not repeat it. Let's
We
put it
agree
that
with
way.
you, sir. That is exactly what we are saying.
Okay. Thanks for the clarification. I do
Okay.
appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you so much.
And this is not the policy in St. Kitts and Nevis, but I know in Barbados, and I would have confirmed from the executives of the Cultural Foundation in discussion up to this summer that all of the Calypsonians need to submit. Mind you, I say this, it does not exist as a policy in St. Kitts, and we are not pursuing it as a policy. I know by tomorrow some other media platforms will take it up and say no said that it will be done. So I repeat, sir, it is not currently a policy and it is not being pursued. However, in Barbados, every single Calypsonian has to, by policy of the foundation, submit his or her lyrics prior to performing it. And if he or she wishes to change a word, a sentence, a verse, a chorus, he or she has to again submit.
Yes.
And there's a vetting committee that would go through the lyrics and give approval.
Okay, good. We are talking policy, which we'll talk about more. But I'm going to open the phone lines. The numbers to call are 1-718-577-2916. That's the overseas number. And the local number is 465-2555. That's 465-2555. The lines are open. Working for you, good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Williams.
Good afternoon.
And good afternoon, Mr. Mills. Mr. No.
Good afternoon, sir.
As usual, good program, you know.
Thank you.
And to good men dear.
Thank you.
I have a great concern. Now, we notice a lot of different style or a lot of different, what you should call entertainment has crept in our carnival activities. And we got to be so careful that a lot of those things don't push out Calypso because, you know, Calypso is Caribbean thing. Calypso and steel pan playing and big drum, macajumbi bull and all those kind of things, and masquerade and clown and sagwa. Well, string band is also our thing too. But we got to be careful what some people go on stage and call it Calypso. Now, some people go up thing and the performance is only, let's say the first line may have in 4 words and the second line having 3, and that's it for the night. And all you can hear up there is wave and shove back, wave and wave. I mean, where is the education in that? And those are what I notice heading up in front of the Calypso. Calypso is our thing, and we got to be careful we don't kill our Calypso with the load of a thing where they come up on stage and say they must sing. That makes no sense. To the youths, they will come in, they want to be Calypsonians, so we got to be careful. So please be careful the way we go with our carnival. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
May I comment?
Sure.
It's a very tough scenario that he painted. We do understand that some of these events are competing for the same set of persons. We would have recently completed 9 weeks of youth Calypso training, St. Kitts and Nevis, from 9 to 4, going across the island. We would have done Sandy Point, Virtuals, we would have done Bastia, Keyon, Molyneux, Sadlers, and Nevis. Okay. And it was the hope of developing Calypso.
I'll interrupt you. We have a caller. Working for you, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon.
I'm calling you from overseas.
Yes, sure. Which part?
I intend it every year for Carnival.
Where are you overseas?
Hello?
Where are you overseas?
I'm calling from the U.S. Virgin Islands, St. Croix. Culture, good afternoon.
Okay.
I'm in St. Croix every year for Carnival. And we visitors who come in every year. I can hardly laugh to say, okay, you come in on the airport, yeah, let's ticket and you win a ticket of choice to go any show you want. We have to do something like that. We have to spend a lot of money to come overseas and we don't need nothing. Get a little laugh if you want to go to a Queen show or Calypso show.
Okay.
And the next thing again, we need to do something for King Elimat and Star Shield every year carnival. Even the DJ come down behind the parade with King Elimat song and Star Shield. Because remember, back then, no carnival at all, Elimat band always there. So let me give them something while they're living. Even you got to get some t-shirt and print on Elimat and Star Shield and you sell them and you contribute something to them. Because, you know, without carnival a long time, you know, they're always in it. So let me do something for them. Get a DJ, hype or whatever, and play all the songs coming down after the parade. Our song with that, because up to this morning, and every time I turn it on, it's Elimat song. We got to give them something while they're living, okay? And that's my contribution for today. And we need something for senior sister to become a senior. And I can't jump and wait between the young boys them now. So just a little something for senior.
Thank you very much, ma'am. If I may comment on the second point first, you would have named Star Shield and Elimat. There are several others, of course, who would have contributed significantly during that era and continue still. Of course, you know, we would have done, and these are just small symbolic gestures, we would have done a painting of Reggie. This year we'll be doing a painting of another prominent artist. Last year, and it's nothing big, I don't think we could ever pay or put a price as to what to give back as to these artists, but the Carnival Committee would have worked closely with Elimat last year, and we would have given him a token of our appreciation. Up to a week and a half ago, I was in conversation with him on the phone, and I'm excited about the fact he said he's going to be here, he's trying to be here, and hopefully we can incorporate him into some of the programs that we're going to have. As it relates to the raffle, I think not only visiting or returning nationals, but we do it for people here as well, and it should be extended. So perhaps we need to sit down and come up with a very transparent way, so we won't be accused of giving individuals without everybody having a fair chance. As it relates to the activities for the elderly, if you can call back in and suggest something, we'll gladly entertain it.
Working for you, good afternoon.
Greetings.
Greetings.
Good afternoon.
Pertaining to the African retention that, you know, we see coming out, the certain soup, we like to see more of that, you know, because indeed we are an African people, you know, because we got our kind of elusive identities, Kitishan, Nivijan, Trinidadian, Jamaican, blah, blah, boom, boom, but we are an African people. That's the naked truth, you know. And we will love to see more of that, you know, even during those times, you know. So all of the people who are responsible for forming troops, etc., etc., you know, dig up your story, dig up our story, and make it come out. The other thing is, a couple years ago, we observed the uniform, this whole heap of uniform inside of the jamming. Those things shouldn't be, man. I mean, you know that, you know, and again, there is this fight and there is this thing and that. If it occur, then they go in and remove they should just be to the side. If something happens, they just go in and remove those persons and the jamming go on. But they are it mixing between the people. Them things there should be a no. Looks like some military something. No, man, take over. We're not done with them things, man. Done with it. Make them people that walk to the side in the uniform, and whoever get drunk and disorderly, we just move them out and things go on. Done with this whole heap of uniform mixing between the people, them like them a foolishness. Blessed love.
Thank you very much, sir. If I may comment, we have another caller, sir.
Yes. Working for you, good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon. It's me just called. When I talk about the seniors, I mean like a little light out, 50 plus. No young people, maybe down to Atlanta by Sharkies or something, you know, you go out and you got a little good time. That's what I mean.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for calling back in. And do me a favor, Ronnie Rascal is in the studio. Can you, the caller from the Virgin Islands, can you be so kind as to give the technical engineer your name and number so we can reach out to you and get your creative ideas?
Okay. Okay, all right.
Thank you.
I will. Up here?
Off here. Thank you, dear.
Okay, all right. Okay.
Now, if I may respond to the gentleman, and sir, every single opinion is important. I start off by that. I'm not being a politician, I'm just being honest. But this is the first time I've ever heard an individual say that the armed forces should not be amongst the revelers. In discussions with the police officers, and we've already been in discussion with them this year, not only the high command, but the second in command I've had conversations with. Having them amongst the revelers, first and foremost, serves as a deterrent. Because the bad elements, the persons who might be having an idea of getting involved in something violent, would see these persons there. Additionally, directly in there, you're in close proximity with what could be an unsafe situation. We know how revelers all around the world revel. And if they're on the side and something happens in the middle of one of those jams, to make your way through the crowd to get to that individual who might be down, trampled, stabbed, whatever the case is, God forbid, it might take longer than if the individual had been on the inside. But it's something for us to pass on to the authorities.
Sure. Working for you, good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon, Mr. Noah.
Good afternoon, sir.
I don't know if you talk about it already, but tell me, when would the first time start?
Yes, thank you very much for calling. I cannot comment on that because, to be honest, I don't know. I must tell you, however, last week I would have had a chance to meet with the management teams of the three Calypso bands. I would have met with Sylvester Socrates Hodge, Nigel Numpy Williams, representing Legends. At the same meeting, I would have met with Wingrove Hicks from the Proud Sounds / Grandmasters, and I would have met with Dwight Huggins and, forgive me, Terrence, Uncle T's, representing Chromatics. That would have been one of the topics for the meeting. I would have had follow-up discussions with Mr. Williams, both of them, Nigel and Wingrove, as well as Socrates this week. And we have a meeting come tomorrow evening. We hopefully, they know, because remember the tents are the responsibility of the bands. So they would visit the sponsors, they would visit the venues and put that together. It is our hope, and it has been our hope for over the 3 years now. If they can get that concretized early enough, we can actually produce a Calypso tent calendar, which we can push out to the public, so you would know where Proud Sounds, you know where Chromatics, you would know where Legends will be at any given day.
Working for you, good afternoon.
Working for you, Leslie.
Yes,
it's
sir.
Working for all of us. Mr. No.
Good afternoon, sir.
You need to get the Deputy Commissioner, the Deputy Prime Minister, assist you in fixing Carnival Village. You have containers over there, you must fix Carnival Village and limit the amount of containers down south and focus on up there, just like in Nevis. This is head of state. And when I went Nevis for the concert, where I see over there, and you was there, I was so impressed. Because that little substation where they're getting from the cabinet over in Nevis, you could see where Mark Brantley doing with the money. And we got to do something over there in Carnival Village. That's one. I move from that to this. You have to do something for King Elimat, Mr. No. Go to cabinet and get some kind of assistance. Talk to Sean to get some kind of assistance to assist Elimat with his record for this year Carnival. He do too much. And King Collins come and run with the torch. You understand? We must look after these people. The question of the armed forces, them in the band, is that looking good. It's becoming like military state. Make them operate on the sidewalk when they see the incident, they move in and take them out and do what they gotta do. You must do that. You can't defend them. You think it's Carnival and designed for army in band. These people gotta conduct themselves. We have laws here to deal with that. The correctness from the boy before, he is who bring that into the Carnival. These people got to understand they got to behave themselves. And when the armed forces outside there.
Thank you,
And that's why
Jamdel.
it's working for all in this country. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Jamdel.
The man
Yes.
could spend money, you know what he do with money.
Yes.
Because he's shaving the money like cards in a pack, you know what he doing. Have a good day.
You too, Jamdel. Okay. Working for you, good afternoon. Hello? Working for you?
Greetings.
Greetings.
The other thing is, you know, some years ago, we was up in Canada and they had a thing, Caribana. We went for a conference, and after the conference, we got taking Caribana. And you know, why the jamming going on in the street, you know what we see behind the jamming? People with truck and water, boom, clean up same time. Now you see the nastiness where they sleep on the street during Carnival, we don't have to do something about it. The nastiness is all year round, and during them time the same way, it increase. What we don't nasty, sir? We would like to see glitter about the place, sir. We for organize, spend money, put the people work, spend money and clean up while people are dirty up on the clean up. And don't encourage the nastiness neither. Have these wardens that tax people. Oh, now run the thing, sir. This is a lot of nastiness. People that drop garbage out boat, that chuck garbage out boat.
Okay, brother, we hear your passion.
We're not put done with that, man.
Okay. Thank you very much.
If I may, and I would have written them down, Carnival City, New Carnival City. I know about perhaps last year, the minister with the responsibility for culture, the Honorable Sean K. Richards, would have presented to Carnival some designs, architectural designs for a new multi-purpose center which would host Carnival. I think at the presentation they would have sent it back for review because it was calculated that the capacity was not large enough. They would have found that the numbers for not only Carnival were growing, but for other anticipated sporting events in the same facility. So I can report at a later date as to the status of that. The Elimat and the record and everything else, and again, persons would have preferences, and I think Elimat is a stalwart. I think there's several others, and all would need to be recognized in some form or fashion as time goes by. But again, we are working closely with him, and we would see. I have no authority to go to cabinet. The person said I must go to cabinet, of course. Those things have to be channeled through the permanent secretary and the minister. I will convey, and the relationship that I have with both of them and the support and enthusiasm that they continue to demonstrate for Carnival, I don't see why either the minister or Stanley Knight, the permanent secretary, would have any objections to, as best as we can, contribute into that. Jamming and the nasty and cleanup part of it. Now, I must explain what is being done, and perhaps we need to do even more. They are private companies, and there is, of course, solid waste management that come around after every single function. For example, they come around after Juve, and immediately when Juve is ending, you see the ladies and the men there with the equipment. It's the same thing for last lap, it's the same thing for the parade. It's the same thing for events. For example, I remember every single year after the opening, we are finishing the opening in November, 2 o'clock, and the ladies are there waiting along Bank Street to come in and clean up. We also have private companies, for example, in the early bird up on the airport highway, we have persons there. We have instituted a new policy. Vendors, at times, some vendors have the tendency to leave garbage behind the containers or even inside the containers.
Yes.
So as a deterrent this year, we've added a $500 deposit. So it is refundable, but you're not supposed to leave any garbage behind or on the inside. So your point is very, very important, and it's being addressed. And if you have any other suggestions as to how to augment the addressing it, share it. Now, forces in the jam, again, it came up. That's something, that decision is a decision for the police force and the armed forces. The Carnival Committee in no way or form has any authority as to how to deploy the security forces. However, I would garner the benefit. I am logging it here in the computer system, and in my next meeting with the police officers, we'll present it for them to massage it and see what the best deployment model can be, so all stakeholders would be happy. But I guarantee you that just like how there are some calling for them to be removed, there are others out there who would say leave them right in the jam for it to be safe. The elderly folks, and I agree, we need to find some way to have, maybe even Elimat, when he comes back, if he's going to be here, give him an opportunity for a large tent and have an event somewhere where persons, and you will have to show me your passport, so your ID. You won't just slip in, you have to be 50 plus, as the person said, okay?
Yeah, well, you know, I'm getting there. Mr. Mills, in terms of, we're talking about policy, is there a carnival policy? I know that a cultural policy, a national cultural policy, is being crafted or drafted. What place does carnival play in it?
Well, carnival is important to culture, and culture is important to carnival. And we would have been in several discussions going back and forth as it relates to giving feedback, suggestions, and input for said cultural policy. As it relates to carnival policies, there are several. There are policies that would relate to the pageants and the Soca Monarch and the Calypso and Road March and everything. And these policies are discussed, updated and discussed, because we don't want my beautiful friend, let's say Ronnie Rascal, who has one of the leading Juve troops here, we want him to be clear, and all of the other competitors, as to what the guidelines are. So there are various policies that are updated on a regular basis that are presented to the competitors or participants prior to all of the competitions.
So when you are indicted as chairman of the National Carnival Committee, you can make reference to section so-and-so of the policy.
Well, there are policies that can be referred to. I'm not being, I'm not...
Someone is on the line.
Yes, not going to...
Working for you, good afternoon.
Yeah, I come back again.
Yes.
Yeah, Mr. Mills.
Yes.
Do you have any plan to have steel band on the road jamming, whether on the parade day or any time in the week before? Because look at it. We as senior citizens, as long as you pass 45, you're a senior citizen. And you know the Calypso and in Antigua name, Calypso, you know what he say? A husband and a wife say, they might jam out the arthritis.
I beg to disagree with you.
With the 45?
I beg to disagree.
Sparrow say age is just a number. We who done 50 and 60 up here, we must be much younger than a lot of them who 40 and 45. So well, you could disagree, but that's where you go. So Mr. Mills, I think you should have some steel band on the road. Because the steel band pace, a lot of us could cope with that. And by the time we done jam and we down there, a lot of us who got all kind of chronic disease, we will want to know gone. So I would like you to bring back the steel band on the road, man. Not too much of this boom putum business. We can't go with them there. Them there for young nigga like Jackie say. That's my suggestion. Thank you very much. So if you ain't got a steel band, get some on the road. That's what you call hold me round me waist, Master Tracy. From side to side and we jam. Oh. All right. Let's why you could come into, you know.
Certainly.
Now, 2 years ago, we had steel band on the road for Juve, and we brought them back again a little bit later. The challenge with that is the number of available trailers to facilitate all of that. I must add that this year, the Carnival Committee is trying to engage a specific private entity to make one available to us. Mm-hmm. So we can use that for Juve, where the steel pan will be on it. Then we have it for Junior Carnival the first day, and we have it for the second day. Oftentimes what happens, we might engage a DJ and a band for the first day of Junior Carnival. But these same DJs and bands are engaged by the major Grand Parade troops. So they go with trailer and everything else. So the short answer is yes, there will be the steel pan competition coming back. 2, we are trying to procure a trailer for Carnival Committee itself, where the others now would go up for the regular bands and everything else, and they would write and try to procure them individually. And if that materializes, it will be done. For example, just yesterday I had a conversation, and it may not be used, but I was told that there's an old galvanized steel pan structure in one of the guts somewhere on their shed. You remember in 19 whatever when people used to push that? So I'm trying to see if I can find that. Mind you, I am not saying that that is what will be used, but even to get that out and put it, let's say, in Bank Street as part of the museum, so persons could see what used to happen 30, 40 years ago.
Working for you, good afternoon. Hello?
Good afternoon.
Yes, we are hearing you.
Mr. Mills, I would very much like you to curtail the length of these shows, where a pageant starts at 8 and at 2:30 with 6 contestants making 5 appearances. You're still waiting for the results, and some of the judges have already left the park or wherever the event is held. And in the event of a tiebreaker, how would you get one of the judges if they are required to break the tie? That's number one. Number 2, I recognize you said that you're putting together a convention to invite chairpersons from around the entire Caribbean to St. Kitts to have a workshop, which I think speaks volume. And I'm glad to know that it is relating to Caribbean people to get us to bridge the gap as one Caribbean, one people. Yet for 2016, we hosted the first Miss Caribbean Carnival Queen pageant, which everybody was overwhelmed with through the Caribbean, which we thought replaced Miss Caraval. But in 2007, it died a natural death. I would like to see that pageant revived under the auspices of the Carnival Committee, which is funded by the government and sponsored. Thank you. God bless you. Have a jolly 2018-19 Carnival celebration.
Mr. Mills, just before you answer that, he's on the whole thing about bringing people together and workshops and so on. In your answer, I want you to extend a bit and to talk about the youth developmental training course for Calypso that was held. And we can probably go and listen to some of what came out of it by the Calypso Craig.
Do you have that?
I do have it.
You have that?
Yes.
Okay, let me talk to you about that a little bit. Started off in Sandy Point, it was from 9 to 4 every Saturday. We gave the youths lunch. We funded their travel expenses. So we would have contacted parents, we would have contacted the principals for the high schools and everything else. I'm taking this opportunity to thank all of the principals from Dean Glassford and Tucker Clark and William Connor and Virtuals High School and SEMS and Sadlers and Keon and all of these schools and principals who came together. We had a total of 50 youths who would have come out to these sessions, and out of that maybe 12 were singing Calypso already. So it appears as if we might get an extra 15 new ones this year, which would be beautiful. At the end of it, it had on music, it had on presentation, it also had on lyrics. At the end of it, Troy Biff Mills, King Craig, McDowell and myself, we would have asked the children what topical areas they're interested in, and we would have written at minimum a verse and a chorus for them to take back to their parents, to their writers, to develop, to participate for Sugar Mass 47. What do you have there now?
Yes, I want Ronnie to...
Ronnie Rascal, what do you have there? Which one? One on slavery?
He has the one from Craig.
Okay.
We'll listen to it.
And best wishes going out to Craig. I heard he was hospitalized just yesterday. Something minor, not Craig McDowell. Let's see if we could have that play there. And it's so nice because he plays the keyboards and Bill plays the guitar, and I can't sing but I talk.
Sitting and thinking about slavery, oh how it brings flowing tears to my eyes. It was so dreadful, I will travesty. Even after death, I still can hear their cry. Our sisters and our brothers and our forefathers stole from their home land. They were raped and beaten, subjected to oppression by the white man on the plantation. As I ask these questions, why the poor African? Why the exploitation by the Europeans? When will the mighty Europe pay for the scars that exist today, for all this oppression by the United Kingdom? Plus Portugal, France and Spain, they cause so much pain. So I asked repeatedly, can somebody, will somebody, anybody, please answer me? Sitting and thinking about slavery, oh how it brings flowing tears to my eyes. It was so dreadful.
We would have had a chance to write about 7 different songs and different topics. And what gave us pleasure is the fact that, and we're not being paid, I am not being paid if it's not being paid, it's just us giving back. But the excitement that we saw in the children, and these were from ages 8 to 17, and some of them even performed the song. So within about 2 hours we would have written that.
Yes.
So we expect some dexterity and some variety this year for Sugar Mass 47. Quickly, tiebreakers. Tiebreakers would be a part of the policy. Some policies state you go straight back to the criteria and see what the judges have done in terms of scoring, so the judges don't necessarily need to be there. The length of the shows, I agree with you. We've tried electronic scoring. We're going to be using tablets this year. We're going to be using Wi-Fi headphones to make sure chairperson, the stage management team all working in sync. We've looked at ways in which Grant Thornton, thank you Grant Thornton, the auditors, could be working closely to make sure, because they need to make sure that no mistakes are made. But if we can decrease the time taken, it would be a lot better. With respect to Caribbean Queen pageant, it was indeed a phenomenal venture that first time around, and I will take your advice on board. I will pitch it again to the Ministry of Culture and see if Cabinet would step forward and make appropriations next time around. However, let us not depend on the government only. Come January, February, let us start writing letters, let us start having fundraisers to make sure that we can bring back that pageant.
The caller spoke about how lengthy these pageants are. And probably if they're a little better organized, they would not be so lengthy. I don't think you addressed his question where that is concerned.
Well, I did answer. I said, for example, we will introduce tablets that have everyone synced. Okay. For example, the stage management would know that, get an email or WhatsApp saying, hey, the judges are finished, put the next one. I looked at JC's this year, and although I thought it was a little bit too much of a hustle, I think the contestants themselves need to turn around a lot faster. And it's a cultural thing, because they're accustomed to sort of take their time and put on the makeup and put on the weave and put on everything else and make sure everything is fitted. So if we can get that compressed, we've discussed it, part of what we're going to introduce this year, not for the public, but there will be a dress rehearsal. We are all chairpersons, all stage management, they have all of their props, they have of their costume, so we can actually time and see if it can finish around midnight. It'll electronic scoring might be considered again, and Grant Thornton will meet with the team to find out how they can compress the time between the actual scores, the tabulation, the ranking, and the passing over the final decision.
Okay, now I have about 3 more questions for you.
I have all day.
Before we end, but we don't.
Okay.
This program is an hour and a half. Do you think Carnival should be privatized? There is that debate. Should there be a burden on the public purse because of Carnival, or should it be totally privatized, or should it be a combination of public and private partnership? What is your view on that?
I think it has to be. It's absolutely compulsory that it's a partnership between private and public. There are some elements which, regrettably, certain pockets of society would not place as much significance or weighting on nurturing, preserving, or having on exhibit every single year. Now, we all know the fests are very exciting. They bring a lot of entertainment. They allow our artists to make money, to showcase their skills. There's the interbreeding of regional and international artists. Yes, and we find that those brands, for example, the fests, they are being traditionally and continue to be owned and managed by private entities. Now, these private entities do not report to Carnival. We don't have to see their financial statements or everything. Of course, one would expect and one would record that all of them would like as much assistance as possible from Carnival and the government. And that too is a work in process, the sort of financial allocations that can be made. However, I think competitions like the Queen pageants, if you look around the Caribbean, the caller a minute ago said that Miss Carnival out of St. Vincent disappeared. There was one in Guyana that has also disappeared. So governments, I think, in my humble estimation, will have to continue providing subsidy for the pageants, the folklore, the steel pan, and all of those other elements that do not involve a lot of soca, dancing, music, whining, getting drunk, and everything else.
Okay.
So it has to be a partnership.
Okay, and this is my follow-up question. Do you think if it was privatized, it would reduce a lot of the bureaucracy, and that the winners from Carnival would be paid sooner?
I don't think it needs to be privatized for that. And I have had discussions, and I have full faith this year in the ministry and the minister that come February, because they're getting the budgets and the financial statements. As a matter of fact, when I go back to my office by tomorrow, the minister will be receiving the expense report for September gone by, which is the end of our 3rd fiscal year. So they can actually go and see how the money was spent. And I think the first year amounted to, from the private accountants, maybe $3.3 million expended. So they can get an idea and he can make the representation. So come February, him and I, or whoever it is at the time, will be there ready to present the checks. So I don't think privatization is needed for that. I think greater emphasis by all moving parts, and without naming the parts, all moving parts need to understand the demands of Carnival, understand the importance of Carnival, and understand the importance of the contributors, be it the bands, the DJs, the participants, the troops, the vendors. All persons are investing, and they're contributing to one big Carnival product, and it's time for us to say yes. If it's going to cost $4 million, let us have $4 million. If I'm the chairman, hold me accountable for that $4 million.
What was the budget last year?
We would have budgeted maybe 4.2 or thereabout.
4.2 million.
4.2.
How much of that was disbursed in terms of gifts? to winners and so on?
Maybe just over $500,000, because that's one of the things, that number stands out because that's one of the first things we send in. Although it's in the budget, we pull out those figures at the end of Carnival, January 4th, and say, hi, we would like to have prize giving. Please make the $575,000 available.
So the Carnival Committee, every year, based on what it receives for its budget for Carnival, there is a financial statement that is done in terms of income, expenditure, breakdown, and all of that.
Correct.
And that is submitted to the minister.
The ministry, correct. The Minister of Culture.
The Minister of Culture.
Correct.
Okay. So at least you have some sort of a financial accountability.
Definitely we do. And like I said, by tomorrow he will have, and it's not for Carnival, it's for the entire fiscal year.
It's the entire fiscal year.
So that expense report would show from October 1st last year to September 30th of this year.
Okay. Now, what kind of exposure is given to the winners of Carnival? And my last question to you would be, what were some of the lessons that were learned from Sugar Mass 46?
Okay, regionally, we know we have representation going all over. There are shows in Nevis, there are shows in Antigua, there are shows in Montserrat, there are shows in the BVI. I just spoke about one of the winners going to Barbados. And hopefully at the end of the 4 Seas, that convention, we would even widen the regional exposure of our winners. Additionally, on the local front, our winners are invited to several different functions as dignitaries or sometimes to perform. So that gives them not only an opportunity to augment their brand, but there are times they perform and get paid for it. Okay? Now, as it relates to lessons learned, I'm still learning that volunteering and volunteerism is combined as a creature is one of the most demanding and educational things that anybody can go through. We've turned Carnival, I think, into a year-round and not just a year-end activity, because that is the way it should be. I have learned that we need more than ever to lubricate relationships at various levels, because there are different stakeholders that may seem insignificant to some other, but contribute nonetheless very important in terms of making Carnival a success. We continue to learn that feedback is important, and feedback, the challenge with feedback, sometimes it comes in various forms. It's packaged differently, and you have to sieve through at times the noise and the negativity before you extract what could be used to improve.
Okay. Well, Mr. Mills, I think you've said a mouthful. I want to thank you very much for coming on today's program. I know there is a lot more that can be said where Carnival is concerned, and quite possibly you would appear on this program at another time this year. But I want to thank you.
Thank you very much, and we welcome the opportunity
for such
to
an
come back.
important part of who we are. Carnival is a big part of who we are. Culture and how we come together as a people and all of that.
And in closing, let me congratulate you on the excellent job you've been doing with this program, which I think would have happened to be your brainchild, and it's only going further and farther. Okay? Congratulations.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mills. You were listening to another edition of Working for You. We had with us our Chairman of the St. Kitts and Nevis National Carnival Committee, Mr. Noah Mills. I know that all of us look forward to Sugar Mass 47. I certainly do. I want to thank all of our callers and all of our listeners to today's program. We appreciate you from week to week. I am Les Roy Williams. I will be back next week. See you then.
Working for you. A weekly talk radio program which highlights developments of national interest and the activities of your St. Kitts Nevis government. Join host Lesroy Williams as he presents news, views, reports, and interviews about everything regarding the activities of the Team Unity government and the building of our communities and the development of St. Kitts Nevis. Tune in and call in to interact with your government and share your views regarding the upward forward development of your community and our beautiful Twin Island Federation. Working for you is weekly, every Wednesday live from 1:30 p.m. to 3 p.m. on ZIZ Radio, Win FM, and Sugar City FM with rebroadcast on participating stations. Working for you.